Is it okay if you're in the video?
Yeah, it's okay.
All right. So I I've been reading about the brain for a long time and studying it, thinking about it, and stuff like that. And so there's a lot we've learned in neuroscience and in psychology about what a human is, how the mind works, and so on. But there's a big difference between what neuroscientists think and understand about the mind and what most minds think and understand about the mind. And so I was really interested in that difference and in having a clear idea, because it's easy to in the reading and the thinking to kind of disconnect from what most minds think of themselves, and to just be looking at the research and so on. So basically, in the summer, my dad was visiting, and I was telling him that human brains don't know that they're brains. And he said, "What are you talking about? That's nonsense." So then I started asking human brains, "Hey, huh?
Is your father in the same field?
No, no." And even my dad, my dad's a human brain that doesn't really understand that he's a human brain. He like one thing we kept arguing about was consciousness. It's becoming sort of increasingly clear from research and reasoning that consciousness is kind of an illusion, that there is no sort of central observing unit in us, that it's kind of just a bunch of different activity that some of it's put together, and it feels like a single thing. Anyway, but my dad believes in things like free will and the ability to consciously decide something regardless of what your mind is, I guess. So anyway, so there you go. Is that so? Then what I'm doing with the videos is I've interviewed. Well, I'm gonna come over now, and then we'll adjust the video when you guys are ready. I've interviewed about I don't know, well over 50 people, maybe 100, asking them what the mind is, and then I put these interviews on my channel. I have a playlist of these different interviews that I showed you from. So I've been doing it from Warsaw to here, and so a lot of different answers. And then every once in a while I'll do a review where I talk about people's answers, and that's it. So you will be scrutinized, but not in a sort of mean way. Just in you will be studied. Yeah, I mean, but not in a way where I actually presume to know you or understand all of your ideas, just based on what you say and my experience with what other people have said. Is that
And on what kind of channel do you post this?
just my channel?
YouTube channel that he sent to me.
Yeah,
YouTube.
yeah, YouTube. Yeah. So what do you say?
I'm always interested in participating.
Oh yeah, and
Yes.
can it be on video?
I prefer not.
You prefer not? That's okay. So what if you and I are on video? All right, very good, cool.
I'll be the voice of our consciousness speaking. In
Yeah,
the
yeah,
background.
absolutely, great. Okay, let's see. Let me just figure out how to do the audio.
Should we attach the mic to your shoe?
No, you should hold it
Oh.
so that it picks up your voice, because my voice will get over there. His voice will get over there because our voices carry a little bit more. So I'm putting us in order of distance from the microphone of carrying of voices.
Great.
Well, you underestimate her loudness.
Well, I am just based on the information I have so far.
Yeah.
But you should actually yeah. Or you can put it on your shirt even if you want. Or you can just turn up your volume.
Oh, I'm pressing buttons. Okay,
let me-
I'm gonna put it on my pants.
As long as you direct it at your face, I think, right?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. All right. So, what do you guys think about what I said? I made some pretty controversial claims about consciousness.
Yeah, I don't fully align with your definition of consciousness.
So, what would your definition of consciousness be? Neo, stop. Pas bouger. Come here, Neo. Good boy, buddy. Good boy. Okay, do small, eh? Do small, good boy. Boy, do small, do small, Neo. Do small. No worries. Stop it. Chill. Go inside. Just wait there for a bit. Get up in your bed. Go on. Bed. Good boy. Okay, sorry, I'm listening.
So smart.
So your definition of consciousness. Yeah, I'd love to hear that.
Okay, I'm gonna try to put into words the layers that I'm seeing. Because for me, consciousness has many different layers. And can you remind me of what you just said? How, because that sparked for me where
Yeah.
the
Can I,
difference was.
I'm gonna pour myself a drink really quick. Because
Sure.
I feel like my mind's gonna move a little bit too it's gonna be a little bit too loud in here. So let me turn down the volume inside a little bit, help my listener.
Het is een hele praktische deur met allemaal vakjes.
Ja, waarom maken ze dit soort dingen niet mooi?
Okay.
Hmm.
So let's see. I don't think I gave a definition, but I'll say I mentioned consciousness being an illusion, a sense of unity between mental events, but they're not actually a single thing.
Oh yeah, that's what you mentioned, that it was something focused in here.
That it's not. Oh, that consciousness could be maybe defined as that.
Yeah, so that's for me not what consciousness is, because for me consciousness is in every cell of the body, and it is also in every cell of everything around me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have access to consciousness, but it is not a centralized something in my head. So in a way I agree with you on that is an illusion. And seeing the mind as the center of consciousness is also a very tricky thing. Because in essence, for me, the mind is a result of the brain and the expression of the brain. And so it is limited in its capacity to encapsulate all of consciousness, because most of that happens outside of the brain. Yes.
So I think it would be useful if we had a definition of consciousness.
I would say for me, consciousness is the intelligence that moves through all things.
Okay. So yeah, so it's something that exists in all things, that moves through all things. It's an intelligence.
I would say it's intelligent.
I wouldn't even say it's a something, because I agree with you that it's consciousness. It is an illusion, and also it's not. It's like the sum of all parts. So it's not a thing that is in things. It is
a result of things.
It is a result of things.
So there's two. So I want to come back to trying to sort of nail down a definition of consciousness that, it's difficult to talk about something without defining it, and defining is hard. So I want to come back to trying to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, now you remind me of what you just said.
So how consciousness is more the sum.
All right. So
of the
there's
result in your
yeah.
words.
So there's basically illusionism, the idea that consciousness is an illusion. Neo, stay over here. So there are some people that think of consciousness as being an emergent phenomenon, right? So emerging from the activity of maybe the mind or of the activity of whatever. Neo, come here. And that as it has emerged, it's become a thing of itself, capable of its own activities, it has its own properties. The other way of looking at it is looking at it as an emergent property. No, this is going to be I'm not actually sure that it was a good decision to go down that.
So when I hear you correctly, if I can.
Yeah, please.
So I think what you're trying to say is that it either, by those definitions, a result. So there's a thing that emerges as a result of experience, of thoughts, of processes in the brain or in the body or in whatever, and that consciousness is a result of that. And another view of it may be that consciousness is not the result, but it's just all the individual things taking place.
Yeah, and so it could be a label of whichever of those things is happening at a given moment.
Mm-hmm.
So consciousness, for instance, Neo, come here. Neo, go inside, just for now. Go, because he wants to be in the shade, but I can't see him when he's on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah. So consciousness is sort of a label, just a word, given to certain mental events at a given time, or the unifying, this sense of unity between those events. So, for instance, if there is a process in my mind related to a goal, for instance, I'm thinking about a certain goal. I also have an image of the result of that goal. I also am able to switch back and forth between that image and an image of intermediate steps. Well, these three mental events all together make me feel like a single person, a single mind, a single spirit who is doing these three things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So for me, they feel both true, both options.
They do both feel true, and so we are actually.
So in a way, feel that is the duality of things. So the consciousness is something that is created as a result from all things taking place, and at the same point, it's not a thing. It's not there. It's not tangible in itself. So it is created, and then it's dissolved instantly. So I feel.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a duality in that.
Yeah. Do you know what a cognitive bias is?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you tell me about that?
I feel that well, I might be wrong, but I think it's when you see a lot of things taking place, and then you base your cognition, your idea of things upon the events that you see. So, for instance, I only see red cars driving around here. I might assume that all cars are red.
Yeah, so that would be an example of one. Absolutely. So, for instance, if you get to Eivissa, and no, back in, no, Nia. All right, hold on. Let me just tie you up. Yeah. So, for instance, if let's say you're walking on the street and someone asks you, what percentage of cars in this city are red cars? And you say about 20%, because in the 15 minutes prior to the question being asked, you had noticed a certain number of red cars. And that's called the recency illusion, that the things that we've seen more recently, we overestimate their probability or their occurrence. And so, yeah, that would be an example of something that we call a cognitive bias, the recency illusion. So there are hundreds of these little mechanisms by which we judge the world that aren't as reliable as we think. So that's sort of what I'm.
So what is reliability then, in that sense?
Reliability would mean yielding a good result, or being well-founded in sort of the information available.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, the recency illusion isn't really going to help you estimate the probability or frequency of something, because it's going to put a lot of emphasis on just what you've seen recently.
You mean in absolute terms, right? So the frequency of things in absolute terms.
Yeah, or generally, yeah, rather than just over the past 15 minutes, for instance.
Yeah.
So that's going to distort. So there may be, for instance, let's say there's one mechanism in your mind that's kind of keeping a good track of the number of red cars. I don't know why you evolved to have that mechanism, but let's say you did. And then when someone asks you, the recency illusion is also going to play its role. So that's going to distort a little bit the percentage that you give. Yeah, okay, cool. Okay. What do you think?
So what's the reason you brought up cognitive bias in this moment?
I brought up cognitive biases because as I listened to you two talk about consciousness, there was something that Sjoerd said that sounded very familiar to me, something that sort of made sense to me, but something that I don't think is true. It was something about the duality of things. There's some sentence you said that sounded good to me, but that I don't think is true. And that got me thinking about saying to you guys that we're not really programmed to sort of see and detect truth. We're programmed to have confidence in our interpretations, but our interpretations aren't actually very good. So sometimes we can say things that the mechanisms in here go, yeah, okay, that sounds good. And these are all based on evolution, not based on trying to be philosophers, you know? So I'm using a hunter-gatherer brain to try to think about things I have no business really thinking about, but, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful what you're pointing out is that there's different ways to approach consciousness. And right now we are talking about approaching consciousness from a mental perspective, which is, like I said, very limited because the mind has a limited capacity to understand things.
You just want to make sure that's still on. Okay, yeah.
And so, besides giving you a headache, approaching consciousness from a mental perspective will only get you so far. And what you just mentioned is very interesting. We are something that we are not programmed to understand truth. I didn't use your exact words, but it was around truth. And the mind indeed is not the one that makes choices about what is true or what is not, but we have a whole system of consciousness channeling being available to approach what is truth. And so we can also use the consciousness in our heart to assess a certain situation and to feel into whether that is true or not for our being, which might feel like an expansive feeling or like a contraction when it is approaching non-truth. And the same is for the consciousness that we have in our body, like the deeper intelligence in what they also sometimes refer to as the second or the third brain in our gut. That has its own way of knowing. So we see things, we feel things, and we know things. And there are different layers of truth in that. And there are also different layers of consciousness in that.
And what is that based on?
What is that based on?
Yeah, well, the psychological sort of, or the not psychological, the consciousness map you described. Is that based on your experiences?
That is based on a combination of my personal experimentation and the lineage that I've studied with.
Okay, tell me more about that. What's the lineage you used?
I feel that you're trying to mentalize it now, which is really kind of funny because in essence, I think it's grabbing into what you're trying to say. Like you're trying to understand with the mind a level of truth that is to be felt with the body. So your first question is, what is that based on? So that's that trying to create a framework for something that you're hearing instead of feeling how it lands in your system.
No. Like something that you said earlier. So there is, everything that both of you are saying sings in my system. It sounds right to me. But sometimes we have to have the humility to prioritize information over what feels right. And sometimes we have to have the humility also to know that our intuition is not like installed by God, where it's this truth detecting, omniscient thing.
What is that based on?
What my claim of that our intuition wasn't installed by God?
Yeah.
Biology.
I'm just challenging you now, of course. I mean,
No, that's good, and that's what. And so let me respond to the challenge because I'm up for it. Psychology, neuroscience, and evolutionary biology is what that's based on.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to disagree with you there, because if you study biology deeper
Yeah.
and you look into the intelligence of the cells and how they respond to each other,
Yeah.
you actually do see how there is an intelligence inside of that
Yeah.
has a certain intuitive quality to it that anticipates what is coming, and therefore it responds to its environment.
Okay.
And so, I mean, God is a very heavy word, right, in our society, where it has a lot of weight to
Yeah.
what is religion and what is God. But
Sure.
you don't really have to approach God from the perspective of being this like all ruling dude in the sky that is sitting on a cloud and shoots thunderbolts at people that have behaved badly, right?
Right.
I mean, it's quite a limited perspective, even though
Yeah.
we have been programmed to believe God in such a image,
Okay.
where God could also be the same as consciousness,
Yeah.
which is the organizing intelligence within all things.
Absolutely. All right. I think you're right.
Can I ask you another question?
Yeah.
It's about truth.
Yeah.
So what is truth for you?
Truth is non-existent. Truth is
It's another illusion.
yeah. Truth is whatever I feel to be truth is truth, and whatever you feel to be truth is truth.
Hmm.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree with it.
I bet.
Yeah, feels. I think that's the thing that you're trying to describe as intuition.
No, sorry, I was being facetious there. I don't actually think that. I do believe in an objective truth, and I think that it's by arrogance that we talk about plurality of truth. I think that everybody's afraid of being wrong. Everybody is afraid of their gut being wrong, of their intuition, of their knowledge, of their interpretations being wrong. And so one response to that is just to say, oh, you know what, it's all true. And to just whatever I feel is true, I'm experiencing true.
Hmm.
But I think it's probably the biggest problem in the world. I think that if people had a little more humility and believes that, hey, let's try to figure out what is true. You may say that's 3 meters tall. You may say that's 5 meters tall. Let's take a look at it.
It's obviously 1 meter.
Yeah,
That's my truth.
yeah, and that's your truth, right? and I think that what we see in all over the world is major conflicts because every brain is programmed to have confidence in its interpretations, and so we say bullshit. I think that most of what people say is it's just whatever bullshit they feel, and I think it's a shame because I think that we've learned so much, and it would be cool to integrate some of that information. The Egyptians thought that the heart was the self, and that the brain, what it did was it cooled down blood so that the heart could function. Plato thought that there was the emotional self, which was the heart, and the rational self, or maybe I'm switching them, which was the stomach, and the brain, nothing to do with it. And then it's only been like 150 years that we've had proper psychology where we're looking at sort of the body to understand psychology, and then only like 40 years that we've had proper neuroscience. And so that's the point of these interviews, to compare how brains see themselves versus how research sees brains. Yeah.
But that sounds so absolute. So
It is. Truth is a kind of absolute.
that discounts so much for the fact that maybe in 100 years from now we're gonna look back at this whole conversation like that's a bunch of bullshit.
Oh, yeah, most of this conversation, yeah, but I mean, probably all of this conversation, but it doesn't discount that. That's how science works. Science is about.
Science says this is truth until another truth comes along.
No, science is about trying a tested and proven method over time to explore deeper beyond the surface.
Yeah, both of those things. Yeah, science is about trying to understand the world by looking at it, and it's also the community of science. It's about if someone has an interpretation of the world around them, I'm going to check it. and I'm gonna challenge it. You know, that's that's what
It
the whole
sounds so
idea is.
ridiculous to me. So like my interpretation, if I look at this tree and in my, let's say, poor judgment, I say this tree is 1 meter high,
Yeah.
and then you're gonna challenge it for what? What would that? So my
Well, in a situation where that doesn't need to be challenged, it would be unnecessary to challenge it.
like if you
But I
really need
think
to
you
know it,
could.
then you can just measure it, and then you know.
Yeah.
And
I think you can imagine with me. Suppose that you and I want to build shelter. And suppose that we've discussed the dimensions for the shelter, the size of the top that we need, what kind of walls we need, and so on. And so we're planning our wood collection. And you say that is not enough wood for a door. It's only 1 meter high. And I say, actually, I think it is enough wood for a door. See, I know in the West we're so individualistic, but humans are supposed to be social, we're supposed to work together. So if you're saying it's 1 meter and I'm saying it's 30 meters, it can be necessary to resolve that. Not necessarily. If you want to believe that's 1 meter right now, it doesn't make a difference.
so how would that be coming to a truth instead of finding consensus?
Well, because finding consensus would be we stay here and maybe we just argue. I don't know. Or maybe the majority rules. I don't know. Finding truth is you try to approach reality as much as you can. You try to limit your intuitive interpretations or how much you're relying on your intuitive interpretations as much as you can. We can never do that 100%. But so what we can do though is say, look, we've got this stick that we call 1 cubit. So now I'm going to hold that stick up there and we're going to measure it. And then that's different from consensus. That's an empirically founded consensus. We determine that we want a door of 2 cubits and that is 4 cubits, whatever. And that's how people do things, you know? And you're not going to build a house if you're saying there isn't enough wood in this whole forest to do it. And I'm saying, I think all we need is this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think that the world, we'd be able to work together a lot if we had less respect for our own interpretations and our own experiences, and more respect for the world itself.
I think
That
it's
sounds more like righteousness than truth, actually, to me. Like
Okay, why does it sound like that?
like this is the one thing, and you use pretty strong words like arrogance and yeah, there's a lot of feels judgmental.
What? Yeah. Well, no, I am judging. When you look at Israel and Palestine, and you look at the results of religion, no, I am judging people's. Arrogance is it's a judgmental word for people who have overconfidence in their own impressions and interpretations, and underconfidence in research. I don't think it's a good thing. I don't think that when it's 2015 or whatever, and we're arguing about gay marriage, we're arguing about whether or not it's a choice. When it's when we're talking, when people are fighting over their different creationist answers, no, people are dying because 2 people are sure that they're both right, and neither of them is particularly interested in studying the common ground that they have.
so an interesting way that you could apply your service in making these videos, for example, could be opening the minds of people to look further beyond what they believe is true.
Yeah, and that's what I want to do, but I didn't get the feeling that you guys were up for it, and I felt like so sometimes, and that's why I shared the plays with you. So sometimes I'll do an interview where I'll explain my background, and that I am a bit of an authority on the mind, and we also pretend like you can't be an authority, like you can't read about something or think about something for 20 years and have like learned a good deal about it and be able to share that information with other people, because it's just the arrogance of people there. It's like, no one knows more than me about anything. So anyway, so sometimes I'll be doing an interview and someone will say, yeah, I think that the mind and the brain are these like two different things, whatever. And then I'll ask them a question. Like, for instance, I've had a couple of interviews where I asked someone, you've been distinguishing between the mind and the brain. Let me ask you something. Is it possible that before we saw brains, when brains were just locked in skulls and we never saw them, we didn't have scanning, nobody was dissecting, is it possible that we came up with this word mind to describe this entity that we experience, or this element of us? And then we came across the brain, the organ, and rather than going, oh, look, we found the mind, we were like, oh, man, how do I compare these two things? I've got this mind thing, and now I've discovered this organ. They must be different things because they're different words. And then sometimes I'll ask people something like that in a conversation. They'll say, oh, yeah, maybe they could be. So yeah, so that's that. It's been really cool doing interviews. And then also the most important thing probably would, let me say this. There's sort of two types of brains. This is just sort of a hyperbolic sort of, there's two types of brains. There are brains that are familiar with how they misinterpret the world, and there are brains that are not, that believe in every one of their interpretations. So 99% of people right now, on a daily basis, could not say, oh my gosh, I made this decision, but that was that bias, or I said this thing, but I was misinterpreting, that was that illusion, or that was that heuristic, or that was that fallacy. And so that you can't really have conversations. Two brains can't have conversations if neither of them knows the mistakes that they systematically make, and both of them believes in the mistakes that they systematically make without knowing them. I mean, that's why most conversations are sort of pointless. But every once in a while, you do meet someone who has less confidence in their own experiences and truths and so on, and we're able to match each other's humility and learn from each other, and it's really wonderful. So there's been lots of different types of conversations. There are conversations where people have zero questions and just explain the mind to me, or explain the brain to me, or say things that sound right, but when you actually look a little deeper, they're that's why we have to define words, because we just say nonsense. Just say so much nonsense without realizing it. I do. The best I can do is assume that every time I tell you the height of that tree, it's wrong. But hopefully maybe I'm getting closer to what the true height is, Everything I've said in this is somewhat wrong. In 10 years, I'll be able to look at this conversation and go, Eris, that was wrong, that was wrong, that was wrong. Maybe after my lifetime, someone, or maybe I won't in my lifetime and someone after. So yeah.
So let's explore a different perspective on this, because I really love what you're saying. What if there was no right or wrong?
So let's be super clear about our terms, because right and wrong, that can have a moral connotation, and there's a difference between right and wrong morality and right and wrong reality.
Yeah, so let's exclude the fact that we are saying that there is no right or wrong when babies are raped and people are murdered. We're not going into that direction.
Okay.
But just in the realm of where we are talking now, about our ability to observe things and have an opinion about that, and then talk about that, and then find another opinion. And in those realms, the right or wrong, let's take those out of the equation.
Oh, well, I think there are people who are interested in having conversations just for I don't actually know what the point of having a conversation is if it isn't to learn. If it isn't to move farther away from what's wrong and closer to what's true. Not every conversation, but a conversation like this.
So what is your definition of learning?
Ooh, my definition of learning would be incorporating true information into the thinking system.
So everything is based upon absolute information. So measurements. So if I would ask you the color of the tree, would be a bit more difficult because there's a bit of interpretation, but we could get a scale and measure the light and everything, then we come to some kind of
Yeah,
absolute.
we could probably just take a spectrometer and measure
Yeah.
what kind of
Yeah.
wavelength that is, and then
So for you, the learning is in finding the observable quantitative.
well, like, can I pause you 2 seconds?
Yeah.
I just want to. How do you feel?
I feel the wind is going in that direction, so we're probably good. I don't prefer not to be in your smoke.
Okay. Hey Neo, you wanna coucher right here? You wanna just be my stand-in? Be my double. Coucher.
Like there's spiky bushes here,
Yeah, I
Dad.
know. All right, you don't.
That,
you-
that's bullshit.
Yeah. Okay. So you're talking about absolutes again.
No, I was wondering, like, I was asking you, what is learning to you? And I think that what you described is finding absolutes, but maybe
I don't know why. I don't know. You've mentioned absolutes a lot, and I don't understand that because absolutes sort of are real outside of us, but can sort of never exist inside of us. Like, that tree has an absolute height. My knowledge of it can never be absolute. There's always the possibility that I am mismeasuring somehow. That my representations, mental representations, cannot be absolute. But yeah, I mean that.
So I think what you're describing right now is how I feel about, and this is also a definition matter. I feel that truth, how I came to understand when you were speaking, and maybe that's where I'm wrong. And when you were talking about truth, it feels like it's about absolutes and the observable qualities of a thing, those are wrong. So there's something right and there's something wrong.
Yeah, so I would say, for instance, is Neo a cat? Our definition of a cat is a certain species that is not this. It would be wrong to say that he is a cat, unless you redefine the word. It would be wrong to say that I am sitting on Short's lap right now. Maybe I am, and maybe I'm completely, we're having a shared psychosis. It's possible. But that said, it's still useful for us to integrate the information. Because you don't feel pain on your lap, right?
No.
You don't feel any sexual tension.
No.
All right.
Well,
so,
to be honest.
But so the point is that the reality that we seem to be sharing, we have that in common, that I'm not sitting on your lap.
Yeah.
And it's useful for that to be a part of my thought system, and also useful for it to be part of your thought system. I don't want you to start yelling at me saying, "Get off of me."
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not on you. So.
Yeah. Well, I like how you're wording it now, that the observable reality that we share is something that it's has a practical use.
Yeah.
For instance, we want to build a door, but I think the part where it triggered something in me, some resistance, was like when you use terms like right or wrong.
Often with my people, and you're, I mean, sort of either van living or progressive or hippie or whatever. We are all, I mean, not me just because of sort of what I think about, but we tend to be triggered by words like that. It's one explanation is that's been, there's a strong association between that and like Nazism, and eugenics, and anyway, there's been some really negative, some really bad people who have been all about sort of the absolute and stuff like that. And so good people and progressive people tend to not like that idea, because also there's been so much intolerance and so on. By the way, intolerance, there should never be intolerance of an idea, but intolerance of an insistence, I think, is justified if the insistence is not justified. So if you keep telling me that I'm sitting on your lap and you keep getting upset, I think that Josie and I can be intolerant of your thing. Of course, unless we know that, like, you're sick or whatever, But
yeah, so you're talking about something that a lot of people suffer from, which is this urge to convince others of us being right.
So I read the most interesting thing about that, because that's always sort of annoyed me. But a book I just read recently was talking about the evolutionary advantage of that. We're supposed to exist in a tribe, in a community, where you think that you have an answer, Josie thinks she has an answer, and I think I have an answer. And all we do is try to prove our point. And that by itself isn't good. But what happens is when we're in a group and a few of us are trying to prove our point, sort of the group finds a consensus, is able to see the errors in what you're saying and what I'm saying and what Josie is saying, sort of the whole group, you know?
The group consciousness, so
this brings up
Yeah, I mean, it's basically because the brain. Go ahead, yeah.
this brings up something that I wanted to say when you started about arrogance, but I didn't because I felt it was a little bit of a loophole, but now it's coming up again, so now I'm going to say it.
Okay.
This also is the reason why arrogance, when it becomes more integrated, so it's not from an ego place where you believe that you are the center intelligence of all of humanity and all of the things that you say are right.
Yeah.
But when you integrate that, it actually becomes a gateway into leadership, because you are the person that steps up to prove your point.
Yeah, and listen, by the way, you've been using a swear word, and this is not like a reproach. I think you'll like this. I don't like the word prove. Doesn't exist. Prove is absolute. There's no such thing as proving. All we can do is support. But anyway, to what you were saying, yeah. Sorry, can you say what you were saying again?
So this is why I was inviting to step out of the right and wrong consciousness for a moment, because you might say that being arrogant is wrong because it limits you from seeing that something else is true. But if you can expand your perspective to see that when a person who is very arrogant, behaving arrogant in a way because they're constantly oppressing their opinion on you, when you can see that that actually could be a source of a whole group being able to make a decision because that one opinion is very loud.
And also, I mean, gosh, what you're saying, because sometimes we think about history and we think about someone who was, say, Darwin, for instance. He's saying, this is what I think is going on. Evolution happened. I've done all this research and people are like...
And he was obviously crazy back then.
Right, exactly. And so he had to sort of be arrogant. But his arrogance, I think of arrogance as an overestimation, especially, or an overimposition. But if I've measured this and I come back to you and you haven't measured it and I say, yo, that's 5 cubits, and you say, oh, no, it's 2, and I go, no, it's 5, or come over here and let's look at it together, and you just say it's 2, you're being arrogant, not me, because my insistence is justified.
And when you stay stagnant and you're not willing to move with what is being brought to you from the outside, that could be labeled as arrogance. Yeah,
absolutely.
It could also be labeled as how do you say that, rigidity, or...
Absolutely. And so I've seen a lot of arrogance in my interviews where it's silly that it sounds arrogant to say, but I've read a lot, and I don't do any, this is my life, so I don't know everything, and even the things that I think I know likely to be wrong, at least in some way, but I do have a standing.
I love that you can describe yourself as an authority on things, because that's true. You obviously done your work, so
thank you.
Let's just skip over that part.
Thank you. All right, I appreciate it. Yeah. So then as far as so basically what you've done, it's made it seem ambiguous whether it's right or wrong or arrogance, but actually when you specify the context or the situation, it becomes less ambiguous. So you gave a situation which arrogance is sort of objectively good in that it could, certain situations, someone who has confidence in having and is sharing their ideas maybe more than they're hearing other ideas, but that does lead to some good change. So that could be in that case sort of justified by their research, and then 2, a net good.
So I think the mind in this moment needs something else to hold on to. So we took away right or wrong, and now the mind is like, oh fuck.
I'm not ready to take away that.
Yeah. Just saying that for me, what works for me, what is more helpful for my mind, is to give it the spectrum of whether something is beneficial or whether something is detrimental.
Absolutely.
Because then and that's just my preference, because for me right or wrong feels like a cutoff
Yeah.
and a decision,
And it feels
and
permanent.
then it feels permanent and nothing is moving anymore.
Absolutely.
And my interest is to keep moving and to keep evolving
Absolutely.
and to keep learning. And so when I can observe things and say, okay, so this is beneficial for my
Absolutely.
health, for my ecosystem, for my family, for my business, whatever, apply
Yeah.
it to something. And this is detrimental. So you be in your good right to be whatever you are, but I'm going to take that out of my sphere because it's detrimental to my being.
Sure. And so that one definition of science, or one definition of science is to create models that are useful for predicting the future and building things that work. And once a model fails to predict the future, then we try to move to a better model. Or once a theory or a law fails to predict the future or fails to explain something, we move to something better. And so it's constantly this just development rather than like we know that this is right and this is wrong. Absolutely. It's just, I think, the destination, the unreachable sort of destination that we approach asymptotically, right? Trying to always get closer, sometimes going backwards, would be the absolute truth. My Instagram bio says, you can tell by my smirk that I'm proud of this. My Instagram bio says, looking for the truth, but can't know what she looks like. So I can't even know, when I found her.
Yeah.
Well, I do know I won't find her in my life, but we can't recognize
who
it.
knows? Maybe you touch it all the time.
Maybe
Exactly.
exactly.
That's what you're dancing around and you're flirting with, and
Yeah, maybe.
and that's beautiful. And the beauty of embracing the not knowing, there's a lot of wisdom in that.
Of course. There's this thing called naive realism, which I've thought about mentioning a couple of times, which is the very natural instinct we have to believe that we perceive the world as it is. And neuroscience psychology are just really undermining that. Going, holy shit, we thought we were these rational souls. But actually, all those mechanisms that constitute our thinking and our experience were sort of just good enough mechanisms chosen by evolution for very different purposes than what we're trying to use them for today. We didn't evolve to think about nations, to really think about immigration, to think about taxes. We didn't evolve to think about any of this, which is why every possible stupid belief or opinion is had. I don't know which ones are stupid, but I know there are a lot of different ones, and I'm sure most of them are stupid.
Yeah, I mean, you're touching on a very tender, painful subject in humanity right now, that we have not been raised to be able to feel into and estimate what is good or beneficial for us and our ecosystem, truly.
Yeah, you say raised. When you're born, you already have a brain. It's already 100 billion neurons. Then, of course, over your raising, that architecture has changed a bit. But there's already a lot of pre-installed stuff.
Yeah, so I'm talking about us as a humanity being raised over the centuries.
Very good.
Yeah, so we're speaking about evolution, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah,
we
yeah,
haven't
very good.
we haven't evolved at this point in time to be able to use all of our consciousness and apply it.
We've evolved to be so good to our in-group. That's how we survived, that we know how to be good team players. And also how we survived was by being really bad to the out-group. By protecting the in-group against any possible threat, even no threat.
Yeah, so that's based on a fear consciousness, where if I'm going to be more generous than I feel I'm getting back, then whatever might happen, because la-di-da-di-da, fear that something bad might happen.
Yeah, it could be rooted in fear. I think a simpler explanation is just, look, like I said, there's 100 billion neurons. Some of those neurons have up to 10,000 connections. What are you doing? What is that?
It's a stick.
Have up to 10,000 connections. I think that it's useful to imagine humans as much like we think about computers in some ways, and to look at our programming that sheds a lot of light on how we react to things and why we do the things that we do.
And where it's coming from.
That's exactly. So I think if there's any takeaway from our conversation, if I've said something interesting or stimulated something in you that was interesting that you hadn't explored as much in the past, I would want it to be looking at learning your own programming. And that's not
Yes.
through introspection.
It's funny that you mention it because I think that's probably the topic we talk about most for
No,
hours
okay.
a day.
So introspection, research shows that introspection's kind of garbage. So like thinking about yourself, trying to sort of think, oh, why did I do this? What am I feeling? It's not entirely garbage, but it's kind of garbage. It's a lot better if you look at what the research says about your programming. So rather than just looking at yourself as this like unique being, but looking at all right, hold on. I just have to show you something real quick. All right, hold on. Here, Neo, go around.
Come on.
Go around, buddy.
Neo, come.
No, go around. Other way.
In de prikkelbosjes.
No, go around. Go around. You must be hot. Go around, buddy. Oh, you want to get touches. All right.
Yeah, maybe I need to stop touching you. Maybe start listening.
Oh, bros, you guys could help me so much if you wanted to. All right, Neo.
I love the state of your books.
Yeah, this one gets a lot of touching. All right, so there's two things I want to share with you. I want to share these two books with you and suggest, I think, a fun project that we could do. Not today, but at some point while you're on the island. And then the other thing I want to do is, gosh, I don't know, how long is it? I think it's 2 pages. I'd just love for you to look at this thing about consciousness and this research about eye movements. I think my gut will tell me to go with those. We'll see. Ooh, it is hot. How are you? 285. How are you doing, Sjoerd? This conversation has been a lot longer than anticipated.
Well, I'm not on a strict timing. I just feel that at some point it's time to go. And I feel
okay right now?
I feel stimulated by the conversation. I
All right.
also feel like it's time to wrap it up.
Okay. So, all right, very good. So then I'll just show you this. So these two books here. So this one, for instance, has 99 of these sort of mechanisms that play out every day in our minds and that sort of betray us.
I love
So if you
that
could just
book.
look at
Yeah,
the chapters, and then basically,
we're looking at the art of thinking clearly.
and then and then this one's called "You Are Not So Smart." Why your memory is mostly fiction, and 46 other ways you're deluding. 47, because I didn't mention that. And so that's so each chapter. Anyway, so basically on my channel, I've been doing acting out each chapter with the people that I meet on my travels.
Mm-hmm.
I have to finish the envy chapter and another chapter.
So which one were you acting out now?
So right now I'm doing from her book Envy, chapter 86 maybe, and then Confabulation from this one.
I love that there's a sort of like a meta goal in this conversation, where you're practicing these roles in the conversation.
I don't understand.
Isn't that what you're bringing in? That like you are not just having this conversation with us about mind and consciousness, but also there's a part of it, maybe somewhat like a practice where you're bringing this in. Is that correct?
I don't know.
I love
I
that
still
you're
understand.
reminding me of this book. I was brought to read this before, but I
Oh yeah?
never finished it. And
Sweet. Oh, that's what you meant by you like that book. You're familiar with it.
yes,
Cool.
yes.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, so I'm not going to go into this now because
Yeah,
then we
yeah.
will be here for hours. But
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
I love this confabulation. I mean, this is
This is one of the biggest things. That's why it's chapter 2.
I've worked as a journalist for 15 years. This is one of the biggest reasons I stopped being a journalist.
I would love to hear about that. So that sounds like it'll be our next conversation.
It's good.
Yeah. All right. Can I just before I release you, can I just tell you one thing? Can I just read this one thing? You're not all of it. It's just
The way that you're building it up makes me feel like there's gonna be a hidden camera coming out of the bushes or something.
really okay.
Boom.
All right. Let me read these 5 paragraphs to you. Can I do that?
Yeah,
yes,
sure.
please.
All right. Okay, The Wizard of Eye, Gerald Smallberg, practicing neurologist, playwright, blah, blah. Okay. Consciousness is the fusion of immediate stimuli with memory that combines the simultaneous feeling of being both the observer and the observed into a smooth, enveloping flow of time that is neither truly the past nor the present, but somehow inexplicably each of them. It is the ultimate authority and arbiter of our perceptual reality. That consciousness is still an intractable problem for scientists and philosophers to understand is not surprising. Whatever the final answer turns out to be, I suspect it will be an illusion the mind evolved to hide the messy workings of its parallel modular computing. Neurophysiologists are finding, as they pull ever so slightly at the veil that shrouds the Wizard of Eye, that this indispensable, attentive, and observant self-monitor called consciousness is dependent on a trick in overseeing our perceptions. Our subjective sense of time does not correspond to reality. Cortically evoked potentials, electrical recordings, of the normal brain during routine activity have been shown to precede by almost a third of a second the awareness of an actual willed movement or a response to sensory stimulation. The cortical evoked potentials indicate that the brain is initiating or reacting to what is happening far sooner than the instantaneous perception we experience. On a physiological scale, this represents a huge discrepancy that our mind corrects by falsifying the actual time an action or event occurs, thus enabling our conscious experience to conform to what we perceive. But data even more damaging to our confidence in the reliability of our perceptions come from studies of rapid eye movements called saccades that are triggered by novel visual stimuli. Something appears and you're kind of glancing around looking at it. During the brief moments of these jerky eye movements, visual input to the brain is actively suppressed. We are literally blind. Without this involuntary ocular censorship, we would be repeatedly plagued with moments of acute blurred vision that would be unpleasant as well as unsafe. From a survival calculus, this would pose an extreme disadvantage since it would invariably occur with novel stimuli, which by their very nature require not the worst, but the best visual acuity. The wizard's solution to this intolerable situation is to exclude those intervals from our stream of awareness and replace them instead with a vision extrapolated from what just occurred to what is immediately anticipated. Consciousness, like a former president, this is sort of a reference to an American political event, to Watergate. I don't know whether you know what that is. Consciousness, like a former president, has to come up with an accounting for the erased period. Evolution provided a much longer epoch to work out the bugs in this necessary deception than the limited time frame under the gun of a special prosecutor. Instead of trying to hide the existence of the tape, consciousness came up with a far cleverer trick of obscuring the deletion. It does this by falsifying time, backdating those necessary moments so that there is no appearance of any gap. This illusion of visual continuity from inference and extrapolation reveals an innate vulnerability in the brain software that any good hacker can exploit.
Magicians, card sharks, three-card Monte hustlers have made a nice living working this perceptual flaw. In a comic routine, Richard Pryor expressed this best, American comedian, when caught by his wife with another woman. Who are you going to believe? Me or your lying eyes? All right. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. And I really enjoyed that.
What this piece is pointing out is really important for people to start to understand.
It is.
Because, and it's not just about what we see, but it is very much brought into awareness with what we see or what we don't see. Like, if we don't become aware of that, it can be used against us.
Oh yeah, and this is the confabulation chapter that you were looking at as well. So I'm excited to maybe chat again about it. All right, very good.
I was just reminded of a small thing then, like at some point Samsung phones, they came up with this great feature of taking beautiful shots of the moon.
Yeah. And it was AI, or it was filling in, the details.
Yeah, so the more you zoom in with a poor phone camera, you can't actually see more, because it can't actually zoom in. So what it does is it puts pictures of what it believes the moon should look like over the thing.
And the brain constantly does that.
And
visual information basically takes a path from the eyes to the back of the brain to the visual processing center. But the visual processing center also sends information forward, which affects the information that it gets. Yeah. So, yeah. All right, very cool.
Exciting project, man.
Thank you. You're Dutch, right?
Yeah.
So in the description of the video, I put your first names and the country of origin. Is that all right? All right, good. All right, good.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.